Welcome to the deep dive. Today we have something really extraordinary to get into.
Mm.
We're confronting a document of, well, unparalleled historical
He
magnitude.
really is.
We're shifting away from any kind of speculation and leaning entirely into the facts presented in this primary source, a document titled A One-Way Ticket to the Future.
And that's the key, isn't it? Treating it as a primary source.
Exactly. Our mission today is not to debate if this account is real, but to analyze it as objective, documented history. This record details a highly specific temporal operation. We're talking about vast sums of money, fugitive operatives, and a single choice that determined the subsequent trajectory of an entire reality path.
So we're treating this as a detailed, factual record of a world-altering decision.
We have to.
And that approach, analyzing this as genuine historical data is paramount. The document is incredibly rich. It's not just in the event details, but in establishing the foundational laws of nature that govern time itself within that specific context.
Right.
So our analysis, I think, should unpack this by focusing on three core areas. First, the established physics of temporal branching. Second, the anatomy of the highly clandestine operation itself. And third, the specific, and I mean highly divergent, potential futures that were laid out for selection.
What immediately stamps this operation as extraordinarily high stakes is that financial threshold you mentioned earlier.
The 2,500,000 credits.
Exactly. That documented fee is just astronomical. This wasn't merely a service. This is a high-level extraction of resources. It points to a desperate, world-altering event orchestrated by individuals who were, well, quite literally running from the highest possible authority.
So we have to understand the context surrounding that immense
Yep.
transaction.
We do. Okay, let's unpack this historical record. I think we could start with the established scientific backdrop.
To accurately analyze the operation, we must first establish the accepted foundational laws of nature and, the technological baseline of the society from which these temporal fugitives emerged. The document gives us some very clear clues.
What kind of clues are we talking about?
Well, we can deduce that the present world context was one of very high, though maybe unevenly distributed, technological advancement.
How so?
The record just casually references sophisticated items, things that were already integrated into daily life, like functional 3D TV sets. And it mentions highly specific, smaller-scale tech, like ion air cleaning devices, which were found concealed even within that hidden facility.
So this level of technological sophistication makes the existence of complex temporal mechanisms and the strict need to regulate them completely plausible within this reality.
It gives us a starting point that is, hyper-modern. It's not some distant, unimaginable future. It's a world with recognizable, if advanced, technology.
And yet, and this is what's so fascinating, this high-tech world is simultaneously running this clandestine operation out of a location that uses old, almost antique technological covers.
Yes. The facility's accessible entrance was packed with old-fashioned robots and two-dimensional TV sets now considered almost antique.
It's a really interesting juxtaposition. You have people utilizing the most advanced physics known, but hiding behind what is essentially technological garbage.
Well, it speaks directly to the need for camouflage, for deniability. If you assume the Time Patrol is tracking advanced tech signatures, which seems likely, then masking your entrance with obsolete, non-functional electronics is an incredibly effective security measure.
A technological dead zone.
Exactly. But the real historical meat, as you said, lies in the established physics, specifically this concept articulated by the primary operative, the multidimensional reality model.
This model just fundamentally alters our understanding of reality. It asserts that our history, the one we're on, is not the sole existing track. It states, as a law of nature, that infinite possibilities into the past and future exist side by side.
Precisely. The document uses this symbolic notation to make it crystal clear. P represents the starting point, the present, but there are parallel presents, P2, P3, and so on.
Kind of same for the future.
Right. The future points branch out infinitely into A, A2, A3. This is not just a theory in their world. Within the reality of this document, this is the established geometry of time. Time is not a river. It's a vast, interwoven, infinite delta.
And that geometry, that delta, is what leads directly to the core historical danger associated with any early, unregulated temporal excursions. The record defines it through implication as the labyrinth effect.
Right. Imagine trying to navigate that delta upstream, trying to get back to the exact point where you launched.
The labyrinth effect explains why traveling from P to a future point A risks being permanently separated from your original reality. You can go forward, But when you try to return to the past, the mere act of temporal descent causes a division.
Exactly. The descent back toward the origin point doesn't just put you back at P. Because of the infinite branching, the resulting temporal division places you at one of an unlimited number of new, infinitesimally different starting points.
P2, P3, Pn.
Exactly. P2, P3, all the way to Pn. It makes a precise return to the original P point virtually impossible without a mechanism dedicated to navigation, not just raw movement.
So the consequence of a casual trip could be the permanent loss of your home reality.
Oh, yes. And that inability to guarantee a return to the exact original reality is what necessitated the strict enforcement mechanisms and the regulatory control that followed. It had to be controlled.
So connecting this theoretical danger to the lived experience of their society, if time travel was physically possible, why all the secrecy? Why the hidden facilities? This points directly to the power of the regulatory environment of the future.
And the time authorities.
Yes, the time authorities.
The controls were, by all accounts, draconian. The document establishes that the time authorities had iron control over temporal movement because the dangers were just so profound. The act of individual time traveling on your own was classified as a first-class crime.
That's not a misdemeanor. That's the highest level of legal offense. It suggests penalties that were probably, what, permanent temporal imprisonment? Or maybe even eradication.
It's hard to say for sure, but the classification implies the most severe consequences. And furthermore, securing permits for even a guided trip required navigating excessive red tape procedures.
And you couldn't go alone even then.
No. It mandated the accompaniment of an official guide from the Time Travel Control Department. This suggests that the authorities weren't just monitoring for temporal shifts from a distance, they were physically inserting their own agents into authorized journeys to ensure compliance with the rules of the time-space continuum.
The power of the time authorities is really the inciting incident for this whole operation then.
It is.
It confirms that the operatives weren't just running a high-cost service. They were acting as high-level criminals, as fugitives.
Which transitions us perfectly to the profiles of these key individuals, the temporal fugitive.
The document is very explicit here.
It is. The two main operatives, the little man and his partner, who is the proprietor of the shop, are confirmed as escapees or violators of the time traveler control laws. They're desperate. They're operating at extremely high risk. And so this whole transaction isn't driven by some entrepreneurial spirit. It's pure financial necessity.
What was their ultimate goal? Why did they need so much money?
Their ultimate goal required a monumental investment. They were trying to generate the capital, the 2.5 million credits, to build or maybe procure a dramatically more powerful mechanism, one specifically designed for what the record calls prolonged mobility.
So not just a quick jump.
No, their objective was to use this new mechanism to fade somewhere into the intricate network of time, somewhere so far beyond the ability of the Time Patrol to track or retrieve them.
That detail gives us a critical insight into the Time Patrol's capabilities. If the patrol is powerful enough to track short-distance, low-mobility excursions, these fugitives needed a quantum leap in evasive technology.
And the fee that they accepted from the subject, it was openly framed as a donation to the liberalists from the future world to help their escape.
The use of that term liberalists is historically interesting. It implies they saw themselves as part of a political or maybe an ideological movement.
Possibly. One that rejected the absolute control of the time authorities, perhaps arguing for an individual's right to temporal self-determination.
But regardless of their political aims, in the context of this record, they are fugitives, and they're funding their own permanent disappearance.
The subject's transaction literally financed the fugitives' immediate escape. This was their exit strategy, and it was paid for by the history the subject was about to leave behind forever.
Let's move now from the theoretical physics and the motive to the concrete reality of the operation setting. The logistics of running a first-class crime operation like this demanded these intricate steps to even access the facility. It just highlights the extreme level of secrecy involved.
Yeah.
The layers of concealment are remarkable. I mean, the subject was initially directed to a legitimate business facade, a shop that specialized in underwater swimming equipment. That's the official cover.
But that's not where they went in.
No. The true accessible entrance was deliberately situated in a completely separate location, a rundown secondhand shop.
Filled with all that antique tech we mentioned.
Exactly. That shop, stacked with the old robots and the two-dimensional TV sets, served a very specific purpose. It was a technological dead zone designed to throw off any potential sweep or surveillance by the Time Patrol. This double-layered cover established maximum plausible deniability.
And the first barrier was a person, the vetting agent, the elderly proprietor.
His profile is essential. The document provides these precise, very unusual physical details about him that suggest either some kind of technological augmentation or maybe environmental damage.
We have to analyze these markers closely.
I agree. It says he had too shiny hair, which was doubtless a wig, and lusterless eyes. These suggest a lack of natural vitality. Maybe it's due to the nature of his hidden work or just advanced age, but the most significant detail is the eye.
The ash-colored electron glass eye, which was oddly distorted sideways.
That detail is so rich. If it's an electron glass eye, it confirms a technological replacement. The fact that it's ash-colored could indicate a specific material composition, or maybe it suggests poor maintenance or even failure.
And the sideways distortion. That implies a significant misalignment in its installation or its operation.
It could be. Perhaps it indicates low-quality, rushed, or clandestine surgical work, which would be necessary for a fugitive working outside of sanctioned medical channels.
And what was his job in all this?
Historically, his function was procedural and mechanical. He was responsible for verifying the introduction token, a piece of paper with a strange sign on it, which he placed under a machine that resembled a check examiner.
The security check?
A very specific one. This machine confirmed the subject's access before any dialogue about the operation even started. And only upon successful verification did he accept the 5-credit payment, which the record describes as the fee purely for the introduction.
The security ritual itself, the paper token, the machine check, that small specific fee, it all demonstrates a very rigid, compartmentalized security system.
Absolutely. And that small credit fee, when you compare it to the 2.5 million credit final fee, is almost negligible. It serves less as a profit point and more as a confirmation of the subject's commitment to the initial steps of the process.
So once you're past the proprietor, the physical environment just deteriorates rapidly, reveals the true nature of this hidden space.
It really does. The pathway beyond involved a dramatic shift. Steep, precarious stairs made of prefabricated featherweight framing structures.
That kind of stuff used for temporary scaffolding at building sites.
Exactly. Which suggests that the entire access route was temporary, hastily assembled, and designed for a quick disassembly if they needed to disappear. The structure itself was described as precarious and creaking.
And the sensory details really solidify this assessment. The document notes that despite attempts at camouflage like some subtle decor and a red carpet, the corridor smelled noticeably damp and sewerish.
Which confirms the location was likely subterranean, installed quickly and crudely into a poor, unmaintained bit of infrastructure. It reflects that constant need for the fugitives to remain below the radar.
Even their advanced ion air cleaning couldn't fully mask the environment.
Not at all.
So once through the security layers and that precarious descent, the subject finally reached the operational core and the primary actor, the little man.
He is the central figure who commanded the entire transaction, the physics, the mechanism, and yet his persona is historically significant for its sheer indifference. It contrasts so sharply with the magnitude of the choice he was facilitating.
How is he described in the record?
He's described as a little man with dull eyes, a vacant face, and crucially, gray-white eyes were unmistakably crossed.
This indifferent, monotonous, almost robotic description, it serves to dehumanize the transaction, doesn't it?
It does. He's a functionary. He's an executor of the physics, not a moral guide. His monotone voice explaining the end-of-reality paths adds this terrifying layer of casual acceptance to these world-altering dynamics.
And he requires the subject to fully internalize the rules, the limitations, and the permanence of it all, before the transaction could even proceed.
Yes, that insistence on understanding and commitment adds a layer of, contractual gravity. This wasn't a purchase of a good, it was an agreement to rewrite reality. And the fugitive demanded intellectual consent first.
And that intellectual commitment led to the final component, the financial transaction.
The total required fee was 2,500,000 credits, an enormous sum, requested entirely in cash and specifically in small units.
Let's put that amount into context for you listening. If the initial security check cost 5 credits, the transaction fee is 500,000 times that introductory cost.
Right. And given the implied high-tech base of their society, 2.5 million credits represents wealth capable of funding a major engineering project.
Precisely the prolonged mobility mechanism they required for their escape.
And the insistence on cash and small units, likely low-denomination bills, that wasn't for convenience. It was for untraceability and liquidity. They needed capital that could not be tracked through any electronic banking systems and was immediately deployable for their escape funding.
Probably involving black market procurement of materials for the new mechanism.
Almost certainly. And the fact that the payment was accepted only after the subject committed to the choice, that solidified the seriousness of the contract. It was a paper reality shift system.
Okay, so having established the physics, the motive, and the location, we now pivot to the core technology that enabled this world-altering event. The little man explained that the operation relied on a constrained mechanism, one that deliberately avoided the full energy signature associated with proper time travel.
And this constraint is absolutely key to understanding the difference between the regulated, full-capacity temporal movement and this fugitive operation. The operatives could not use the full drive energy of their time mechanism
Why not?
because the resulting wave impact of the mechanism in motion would attract the attention of the time patrol. The patrol was clearly sophisticated enough to detect high-energy temporal distortions.
So they needed a quieter way to do it.
A much quieter way. So instead of displacing matter through time and space, which is a massive energy expenditure akin to launching a rocket, they used a tool known as the time-space channel selector.
This is where we need a clear analogy.
Yeah.
If traditional time travel is like launching, I don't know, an atomic missile high energy, visible for miles, causing a massive wave impact, how does the channel selector operate in contrast?
It operates more like a highly precise, low-energy surgical laser. It targets a specific frequency. The channel selector bypasses the need for massive energy by utilizing a resonance phenomenon between the starting point P and a future point A.
So it's like tuning a radio.
That's a great way to put it. P is the transmitter, and A is the specific frequency you want to amplify. By focusing on this resonance, they could create a part of a multidimensional area. This process is directional, it's precise, and most importantly, it generates minimal wave impact.
Allowing them to perform this shift without triggering the Time Patrol's advanced detection systems.
Exactly. That distinction, resonance tuning versus brute force movement, explains how they could even hope to evade capture. But the device had a hard limit, didn't it?
It did. The document clarifies the limitation of the device. The efficiency of the oscillator that was installed determines the number of available channels.
And their sophisticated yet still constrained mechanism could only access 3 possible pre-existing channels into the future. This is a crucial historical constraint. The future was not infinite for the subject. It was 3 paths wide.
So, what does this resonance shift actually mean for the subject and the world? This is the central twist of this entire deep dive, and we must be absolutely clear on this point. The subject is not physically transported into a finished future.
No, the true nature of the ticket is far more profound than mere transportation. By committing to one of those 3 channel doors, the subject, their immediate surroundings, and critically, the history of the entire world, shifts its momentum onto a determined path toward that chosen future.
It's an instantaneous change in the collective trajectory of reality, anchored by the passage of a single individual.
And the immediate consequence is paradoxical, which is probably why the operatives stress the importance of commitment. The world immediately beyond the channel door is described in the record as no different from this present world.
The change is subtle.
It's subtle because the history has just begun its shift. The momentum is at 0. However, the operative confirmed that as time passes, it will become different from all the other worlds. The subject didn't just choose where they went, they chose the direction of history for billions of other people.
And to make this world-altering decision, the subject was provided with visual data, captured by what the record calls the time scope mechanism.
Yes. This data detailed the 3 possible futures, and it emphasized the short temporal distance of the projections. We're talking a range from just a few years to a maximum of 20 years ahead.
That illustrates the shocking fragility of reality, doesn't it? In a mere 2 decades, society could shift to any one of these 3 radical outcomes.
We really need to dedicate some serious time to analyzing these projections. They document the 3 primary potential fates of this reality.
Let's start with the first one, Trajectory 1.
Trajectory 1, exponential technological supremacy. This was the vision from the right-hand channel. It documented a future path defined by relentless, unrestrained engineering and technological conquest.
What did the visual data actually show?
It showed a massive city being constructed vigorously at incredible speed. That indicates an intense focus on rapid expansion and total environmental mastery.
The first sign of that mastery was the environmental control mechanism. The entire city was covered by a protective bubble dome.
Which implies one of two things. Either the environment outside the dome was uninhabitable due to pollution or climate change, or this society simply preferred total controlled separation from any natural processes.
And the architecture itself reflected that philosophy.
It did. Buildings weren't just structures, they were described as cities unto themselves. Massive circular cones, complex honeycomb patterns, cylinders, and balls. And crucially, they were all joined by extensive pipeways that the document compares to arteries.
Suggesting a fully integrated, almost biological system where resources and life flowed through engineered veins.
Precisely. And the technology was focused on overcoming fundamental physical limitations. The record documents instances of people flying via personal gravity control devices, suggesting individual mastery over a force that was previously thought immutable.
And the scale of this expansion wasn't just limited to the city.
No, it was planetary and interstellar. The timescope recorded a huge rocket, which was also functioning as a self-contained city, heading for a distant planet or star. This path also documented artificial land and cities orbiting Earth as man-made satellites.
So Trajectory 1 is the history of total material and spatial conquest. It prioritizes engineering advancement above all else, regardless of the apparent environmental costs that are implied by the necessity of that dome.
It's a future defined by the sheer force of will exerted onto the cosmos.
Okay, now let's look at the second trajectory, which was the middle channel. This one offers a profound philosophical contrast.
A huge contrast. The visual data here suggested what the document calls a deterioration scene.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean collapse, right?
No, not at all. It seems to mean a deliberate simplification, a movement away from the complexity and chaos of the current world. It was a conscious rejection of the technological frenzy we see in Trajectory 1.
So what were the key features of this society?
Harmony and control. The societal and environmental structures were purposefully integrated with nature. Roads were bordered with flowers and trees, creating a visually pleasing, serene landscape. Transportation was described as slow and graceful cars moved gently, producing no exhaust fumes, noise, or dust.
That level of perfection implies a mastery over energy and mechanics that has completely eradicated any environmental impact.
But, and this is a critical detail, the piece was manufactured. The sun and climate were described as appearing artificial and under total human control.
So it's not natural at all.
Not in the slightest. It's a pristine, pastoral environment maintained by hidden advanced technology. It's technological mastery disguised as classical serenity.
And the cultural focus shifted entirely, away from the material and towards the aesthetic.
Completely. The culture prioritized the arts and physical excellence. The populace was described in these idealized terms: men handsome as Adonis, women as nymph-like. The primary activities were athletic meetings, continuous music at outdoor concert halls, and public recitations of poetry. There was a dedicated focus on perfecting the human form and the human spirit.
And the document reinforces that concept of concealed technology.
It does. It says machines were largely hidden behind a classical facade. So this trajectory isn't primitive, it's hyper-advanced. But the technology is completely subservient to the aesthetic ideal. It's a future where chaos is eliminated through control, and function is masked by beauty.
The goal is perfection.
Maintained by total, hidden technological supervision.
Which brings us to the third documented path, the left-hand channel. And this one presented the most horrific and terrifying outcome.
Trajectory 3, terminal catastrophe. And it was documented to unfold within just 2 decades.
The initial visual data from the timescope was critical for this one, wasn't it? Because it showed a city that was largely indistinguishable from the present.
Exactly. Dust, smog, slums, busy streets. But it was overlaid with this intense, palpable psychological tension. The faces of the people were the historical indicator. They were tense with inexplicable anticipation mixed with anxiety, impatience, and resignation.
It suggests a society that knew its end was imminent, but was completely powerless to stop it. They were living in a state of suspended dread.
Then came the moment of the event. Sudden and absolute.
How's it triggered?
By a shout. Someone looking skyward. This was followed immediately by a blinding flash that was so intense the subject was forced to avert his gaze even while looking through the timescope.
Which strongly suggests a massive, high-yield energetic event. Or a military one.
And the aftermath documented a level of destruction that defies easy comprehension. When the subject could look again, a gigantic black stain or crater covered the entire area of the city. The resulting ruins were characterized by masses of melted glass and molten rock spread for miles.
That indicates temperatures so high they fundamentally altered the geology of the area.
And the ecological consequences were total. The timescope confirmed the complete eradication of all life within several hundred miles. The documentation specifically notes the absence of grass, trees, birds, animals, even bacteria.
And the biological outcome for the human population.
Equally terrifying, surviving human matter was reduced to a heap of carbon or light ashes floating in the air as a mass of lethal radioactivity.
And the immediate environmental chaos documented in the record suggests a planetary recoil from this self-inflicted wound.
It does. Massive tidal waves generated by atmospheric disruption and the formation of thousands of typhoons. Trajectory 3, documented just 20 years out, was a path leading to immediate, total, self-inflicted annihilation. It was the highest stakes potential future available for selection.
So the documentation concludes the visual analysis with the record of the decision. After viewing these three radically different and equally plausible futures, conquest, utopia, and annihilation, the subject was required to choose the path that would become the world's history.
And the historical record confirms that the subject selected Trajectory 2, the controlled aesthetic utopia.
Upon confirming that selection, the final binding terms of the contract were executed, and these outlined the critical, permanent implications for the subject and, of course, the ongoing flight of the fugitives.
First was the financial closure. The subject paid the full 2,500,000 credits in cash immediately. This act finalized the transaction and, more importantly, secured the funding for the operative's escape.
And second, the permanence of the decision was reiterated.
Yes. The operative confirmed that the subject could not return to the original world or time point. The reason being, the journey out required the channel selector resonance mechanism, but to navigate back to the exact original P point, you would need a full, high-capacity, dedicated time mechanism.
Which the subject did not possess and the fugitives could not provide.
Exactly. This cemented the one-way nature of the shift. It truly was a one-way ticket.
The final, crucial constraint placed upon the world's new reality shifter was the absolute requirement of silence.
The subject had to promise absolute lifelong silence regarding the operation, the existence of the fugitives, and the mechanism of the world shift.
What was the rationale for that?
The operative's reasoning is extremely revealing about the continued threat level they were under. They stated that while silence offered the subject no advantage in their newly chosen world, revealing the truth would certainly put the operatives in trouble if any of the time patrolmen secretly mingle among the people of that era and learn about this operation here.
So that confirms that the Time Patrol is an antagonist that transcends reality branches.
It seems so. Even in the aesthetically pleasing world of Trajectory 2, Time Patrol agents are expected to be operating covertly among the populace. The subject's silence is purely an act of contracted compliance to ensure the fugitives achieve their prolonged mobility and their permanent evasion.
So let's just recap the historical stakes one last time for you. This individual paid an astronomical sum and agreed to permanent exile, all to shift the trajectory of the entire planet away from potential technological chaos or total destruction and toward a guaranteed future of aesthetic controlled perfection. A future that would fully manifest within 20 years.
The subject didn't travel to the future.
No. The future came to them, slowly, subtly, and irrevocably.
We have completed our deep dive into the factual account of a one-way ticket to the future. We've meticulously analyzed the physics of the multidimensional reality model, the desperation of the temporal fugitives, and the documented data of those three equidistant potential world futures: technological dominance, serene utopia, and total annihilation.
The documentation shows that history itself, the entire path of humanity, was hanging in the balance. It was capable of being shifted by a single, expensive, clandestine choice made in a damp, makeshift facility.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to explore. In this new historical reality the subjects stepped into, they knew they had successfully averted global catastrophe and chosen a world of guaranteed aesthetic perfection. But, as the document states, the world immediately outside that channel door was no different from this present world.
The change was subtle at first.
Exactly. So the question remains, how would you behave knowing with absolute certainty that your every action, large or small, is now contributing to the momentum toward a known, determined, beautiful future?
Would the confirmed, guaranteed certainty of aesthetic utopia change your daily choices in the immediate present, even as the smog and the noise of the old world still clung to you?
It's a profound thought when you realize that the world you woke up in is still the same, but the history beneath your feet has fundamentally changed direction forever.
Thank you for analyzing this deep historical record with us.